And we should be live. Sorry for the slight delay there. I was having issues with my microphone working for some reason, but we got them going. So we've got ourselves four HomePods in for repair today. Let's see. First one comes from Bob and it's got no power. Then we've got Ryan's also with no power. And then we'll move on to Erickson with Death Farts. Ooh, changing it up a little bit there. And then we'll wrap up with Allen's, who also has no power. Just to give you guys a little update on what I've been working outside of the normal repairs here. I managed to actually start chipping away at my stack of broken amplifiers that I need to repair. And I managed to fix up two with no bass back up again and working great. Turns out both of them needed new amplifier ICs, so that was not the easiest thing to do, but we got them working again. So I'm starting to build up my my stash of working amplifiers in case I need to swap anyone else's out. Anyways, let's grab Bob's HomePod here, and we will start fixing up. Go. Got a little note in here. It's probably just a printout of our email. Yep. Okay. Let's take a look here. We've got a pretty sizable dent in the mesh right there. We'll see if we can't massage that out. No big deal. Otherwise, it seems to be in a pretty fantastic shape, if you ask me. But they're not here to sit and look pretty, they're here to get fixed, so let's get all that set to the side. We can focus on our main attraction here. We're going to go ahead and plug this into some power first just to verify the symptoms. We don't want to get halfway into this and find out that the person sending it in mistook it for another one or accidentally sent the wrong one in, misunderstood the problem. Basically, we just want to make sure what they said is happening is what's actually happening before we just dive in and start fixing and diagnosing and So, get that plugged into power. And yes, indeed, we've got no signs of life. And our watt meter shows about 4 watts at the wall. So generally, here's how I do a quick diagnosis with these no power issues, right? So if you see a power draw more than like 2 watts, so let's say if you see anywhere from 3 to 11 watts being pulled from the wall, that's most likely the shorted diode on the amplifier issue, the most common cause for no power. If you only see about 1 watt being pulled at the wall, that's not as likely to be a shorted diode on the amplifier. That might actually be a shorted capacitor on the logic board. And then finally, if you've got no power and you've also got no power being drawn at the wall at all, like 0 watts, then that's most likely going to be a blown fuse on your power supply. The reason why the shorts draw power and a blown fuse doesn't is because, well, if the fuse blows, then that completely blows open the circuit and there's no continuity for the power to flow through the appliance and show you any sort of power drop. Whereas shorted component failures that cause these no power issues, they will draw power even if you don't see it actually doing anything, because that short it does have a complete circuit and it is actively pulling power, but the component's shorted, so it's not allowing the full system to operate the way it should. So hopefully that all made sense. We have a reasonably confident guess as to what's going on here based on the symptoms we've been seeing. So let's go ahead and crack it open and dive right into our first suspect. We're just gonna get our spudger in here right under that top cover and work our way around it. We're trying to keep this tool level with the top touch surface here so we can avoid scratching it up from underneath. And just like that. Then we can grab our T6, the only Torx screwdriver bit that you'll need for the majority of your HomePod repairs here. And we'll get those 4 screws out of the display. And then we'll grab our spudger again, and we want to pry this display up. I'll grab a broken display here so I can show you what not to do when pulling this display up. You want to make sure that you are prying this whole display up as this single unit here. You want this top plastic here with the adhesive on it and the PCB to pull up as one unit. Do not get your spudger in between the plastic layer and the PCB layer of this display. This is a no-no. What'll happen is you can easily scratch up, if you're using a metal tool, you can scratch the PCB in between these layers and damage or destroy your display's functionality. Or you can end up breaking off your ambient light sensor that's in there. Because the tool's deep enough as you're working around, you're inevitably going to break this off. So, worst case scenario, I mean, if you end up doing that by mistake and you break off your ambient light sensor, the display will continue to work just fine. The only catch is when it's on, it's going to operate at full brightness. Some people wouldn't see that as a problem, some people do. But in any case, there's your pro tip for getting that display off. What to do and what not to do. So we're going to go ahead and do just that. Make sure we get under both of those layers. And instead of using a metal tool to pry all the way around this and start marring up this plastic, we're just using the metal tool to give ourselves a gap and insert the plastic tool underneath. Once we've done that, we can pull our metal tool out. Our plastic one is still in there, and we can use that to pry this display up without risking scratching up or damaging this PCB or chewing up this plastic frame around it. Then we can get this frame out that sits on top of the logic board. Let's go ahead and get a nice close-up zoom of what we're working on here. I'm taking you guys for a ride, wow. There we go, beautiful. Let's go ahead and zoom in up here as well. Beautiful. Get that frame out of here, and we can get this logic board out. We're gonna unlock that connector, and then we're gonna pull this away from the cable at a 45-degree angle so it pops right off. Then we're gonna grab something that's the same size as our rubber base here to set this down on so that we can pull this mesh down without it pushing up against the table and getting stained and imprints and all that from our mat here. You can see underneath we've got clearance for that mesh to hang out without rubbing against anything. So let's get back in there. And let's get this ribbon cable detached from our basket from right here. So we're going to use our fingers to sort of pull and wedge that off. Grab our plastic and make sure there's no strings attached. And we'll get another tool here, and we're going to pop off these rubber insulators that are covering these screws going around the outside. And back to our T6, let's go ahead and take these screws out. Right. All those screws for the basket around the perimeter here have been taken out. So before we start breaking a sweat getting that pried off here, let's go ahead and crack open our drink. Get a little bit of hydration in us. We've got the Costco Special Rogue Pumpkin Patch Ale. I've already had one of these the other day, and it's all right. Definitely not the best that I've had on stream here. Oh, okay, never mind. That's way better when it's actually cold. Not bad. Without further delay, let's pry this basket off. Seems to be given up relatively easily. Maybe I spoke too soon. No. Oh yeah. Get him. Get him. We're gonna be careful when we get close to this cable here. We don't want to stab the cable and create more work for ourselves. I've seen that happen far too often with other people's self-repairs. So if anything, just avoid that whole area there and pry up the rest of it, and then you can basically just take this off by hand. Okay. Got a lot of adhesive on there, but let's get this subwoofer out. There we go. And we can lift this bad boy out. And since we've got it here, let's go ahead and take a peek at the condition of this speaker here. So if we look into our inspection window there, a little inspection port, we can get a glimpse at the voice coil, which is a copper wrapped cone. And we just want to make sure that that doesn't look burnt or discolored at all. We're looking for a nice golden copper color in there. Not a dark, charred, black color like this one here. That got roasted. This one looks great. And if I gently push the speaker cone in and release, so that feels perfectly smooth and I don't hear any scratchiness. And then finally, smells great. Smells like a healthy woofer. So we can rest assured, set that aside. This is good woofer. And we will get this logic cable pushed through so we don't rip it out when we take this ring out. And speaking of which, let's go on ahead and unscrew this. Y'all let me know if the microphone is turned up too loud there. Sometimes I see the VU meter hit the red and I'm not sure if that's clipping and sounding horrible or if maybe I'm too quiet. Heck. Or maybe it's just perfect. Maybe. And get the last ring out of the way here. And while we're thinking about it, we'll go ahead and pull the grommet off the logic cable here. As long as we don't forget to put this back, we'll be in good shape. And then we can get this power supply out of the way. And again, since we saw power being drawn at the wall, and based on previous experience with these repairs, because there was power being drawn at the wall, most likely our power supply is just fine here. Because usually when these power supplies quote-unquote fail, they usually are working just fine. They just have a blown fuse. So in that case, we wouldn't see power being drawn. But we see power being drawn at our watt meter here, so our primary suspect is not the power supply, but the amplifier. So let's get this power supply pulled straight up until it's disconnected, and then we can move that freely and set it aside. Get that ribbon cable down there disconnected. And last but not least, let's unscrew the amplifier. All 14 screws for the amplifier are removed, so this can be taken out now. We'll set the shell to the side, and then we will bring our attention to that diode on the amplifier. Switch up our cameras, and there she is. And just from the looks of it, that diode looks pretty toasty. But we'll go ahead and grab our multimeter here, set that to continuity test mode, and if we hear the beep, that means we've got continuity. And in this diode's case, a bad diode is going to have continuity, aka it's shorted out, and a good diode will not have continuity through it, aka it will not be shorted. So we want for, well, hold on. Yep. So that diode is indeed shorted out because our meter's beeping at us. That tells us it's got continuity, which pretty much means that that component is just allowing a straight through connection through itself, and that's not bueno for this specific diode here. So let's get our hot air turned on. Bring that on over here and pull that old diode off, and then we will install a new diode, and then we'll see if this board powers up. And there we go. Go into the graveyard for you. Let's get our soldering iron warmed up here and break out a fresh spanking new diode. Get that fluxed up. Might as well put some flux on our board over there while we've got it in our hands. Clean off our iron and get some fresh solder on there before we tin this diode. There we go. Drop that onto the board. And we are ready for the heat. All right. Let's just clean that up a little bit here. It's not necessary with the specific type of flux I use to clean it off the board. It's specifically no clean flux. It's perfectly safe to leave it on there. But we need to wait for this to cool down a little bit, so we've got nothing better to do here. Give it a little wipe. Got some on our mat there too, but that's okay. Okay. Let's grab a power. Ooh, that's still very hot. Yeah. Hot, 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 hot. Cool down now. Okay, time for a power supply. Let's go ahead and power this amplifier up, see if we got it all fixed. And if we get it powering on, we want to check it for any DC offset. Two totally different issues, but common enough that we want to go ahead and check for both of those issues while we've got it apart. Hold on, I gotta put my phone on Do Not Disturb, because I'm being thoroughly disturbed right now. All right. You know what I find just slightly annoying is when you put yourself on Do Not Disturb, there's by default an option in iOS that will allow people to actually ring your phone. It'll actually make your phone ring through Do Not Disturb if they immediately try to call you again. And I've got this one guy that I work with who just doesn't give a shit what you're doing or if you're busy or not. he'll call you, you go, and then he'll call you again because he knows it's going to push through Do Not Disturb and get your attention. And it's, geez, some people. All right. Before we power this on, let's go ahead and bring our multimeter in here and connect that to the subwoofer. Check and make sure we've got a good connection. We want to get a good idea of how much DC offset, if any, this board has after we get it powered on here. So here's the test. And yeah. We got power. Okay. Now that the HomePod's booted up, it hasn't turned the amplifier circuitry on yet. So we're not going to see any DC offset if it has any. We need to wake up the amplifier first, and there's multiple ways you can do that. You can trigger Siri, you can connect to it via AirPlay, but the easiest thing for us, since we've got tap for Siri enabled on this logic board, we'll just go ahead and wake her up. And we've got a very reasonable result here of about 0 millivolts here, fluctuating around between 0 and 3. That is a totally acceptable result. We just care about seeing this stay below 50 millivolts. If we saw this above 50 millivolts or we saw it increasing towards 50 millivolts quickly, then that would warrant us going back in there and replacing a few filtering capacitors. But in this case, this one's seeming to be in great working order, so we're going to leave it alone. This one is all ready for reassembly. So let's get these spare parts off, and then we'll put it back together. Here's our shell. Go ahead and put that amplifier back in. Want to make sure that we drop this in perfectly lined up with the speaker posts underneath. We don't want to just slap this in there and spin it around a bunch, because those speaker terminals underneath will cause various types of shorts if you're not careful putting that into place. last screw for this amplifier. Alright, we can go on in there and reconnect that logic cable to the board here. Very good. Grab that power supply and drop it back in. Make sure that we've got the screw holes lined up before we push that down to reconnect that connector underneath. Then we'll get this one, plug it back in. Alright, time for our upper rings. Get this ribbon cable gasket put back in before we forget. Get some of that extra adhesive that would stop our top basket from sitting right. Hello? What color did you get?
Sunset orange.
Ooh, you need to do just your whole hair?
No, first I'm gonna bleach back my ends to lighten them a little bit, and then I'm gonna color fill it with a copper color. Then put this over top, but I'm gonna leave my bangs. My side piece is blonde for now. So we'll see how it turns out.
No pink? There we go. That sits nice and flush without us even having to screw it down. So we'll go ahead and grab those now and screw it down. remember, there's no reason to over tighten these specific screws for this top basket here, because at the end of the day, these screws and this basket here do not do anything for sealing. You could have these parts off, you could put this on and not have any screws in it, and it would sound pretty much exactly the same as with it screwed and glued into place. That's why we don't really worry about re-gluing this or replacing the glue or reaming on these screws real tight, because they just have absolutely zero bearing on the seal of the speaker here. At least based on my personal testing experience and having repaired probably a few hundred of these by now. You're far more likely to run into a number of other issues before this stops any of it. Alright, logic board. Follow the reverse from how we installed this, or took it out. Insert it at a 45-degree angle, and then we can lock it into place. Get that frame. Pull the mesh up. Put our screw covers back in before we pull this all the way up. All right. Let's plug this into some power and hope for the best here. Drum roll, please. Booyah. And
I'm having trouble connecting
yes,
to the
yes,
internet.
yes.
I'm having trouble.
And yes, yes, yes. Everything checks out. All right. Let's go ahead and set this bad boy from Bob to the side. Excuse me. And let's switch up our text here to Ryan's HomePod. Whoa! There we go. And let's see. What's in store for us from Ryan? Go ahead and yeet that power cable. We don't need it. And here we go. Pod number 2 for today. Also with no power. Let's get that plugged into an outlet and check our symptoms again here. And yes, sirree, no signs of life. And the same thing as before, about 4 to 5 watts being pulled at the wall. So we pretty much know what to expect now. Let's get this torn apart and do some fixes. And there we go. Let's see how well this view treats us. I feel like you can see more while I'm working on the top of it at this angle. And just like that. this one's coming up too easy. I love it. Give me a break. All right. That'd have been a new record. Woofer check. Looks good, feels good, smells good. Woofer passes all checks. Amplifier be free. Alright, same deal as before, folks. If we take a look at that there diode, get a look at that there meter here. Come on. There we go. And we just probe that little guy real quick. We know what to expect. Yep, that diode's bad. Let's let's get it replaced. Any second now. There we go. We'll stick that in the graveyard. Get. Break out a fresh new diode. Oh no. There we go. Give this a second to cool down and we're going to clean it off, and then we'll power it on for a quick test for obviously power and DC offset. Woo, there it goes. Ready for test. And 2 for 2, we got power. Take a celebratory sip. And let's power this on and give it a check. Alright, so the base is working. We've got an ever-growing amount of DC offset here. It seems to be just about at 50 millivolts, and it's probably going to continue climbing past that. So we will want to go ahead and do a little more work on this board. Let's go ahead and take the parts back off of it and replace those filtering capacitors on the back side. See if we can't improve that DC offset situation there where it just keeps growing so fast like that. Alright. And because this makes my job so much easier without the camera right in front of my face, I'm going to go ahead and give you guys this sort of angle here. And the caps that we're going to be replacing are these 4 big brown ones right here. So after we get this replaced, our goal is to power this board back on and check with our multimeter that our DC offset stays below 50 millivolts and that it's not constantly growing at least as fast as it was before. That was quickly on its way towards causing more problems. So let's get those old ones pulled off. And because we're cool like that, we can pull 2 of them off at a time. There we go. All the old ones are off. Let me see if I can get you guys a better angle here. A nice, good, up-close shot that's not in my way. There we go. That should do the trick. And then we're gonna get some soldering, or excuse me. Man, that beer messes me up. Let's get some flux on here, because we're gonna put some fresh low melt solder, low temp solder on here, so we don't have to subject the replacement capacitors to as much heat. And then we're gonna get our soldering iron, and if you were curious what this little, if you look at the tiny camera up at the top right, if you were curious what this little silver disc on my soldering mat here is for, I put this here specifically, and I'm sure there's better ways and solder you can buy specifically for this, but I've got low melt solder in a syringe, and that's what I got. So I'm going to squirt it out onto my little metal disc here and then pick it up with my iron. And I know I could probably squirt that solder directly onto my board here, but this is the way I like to do it. And there we go. That's all there is to it. Well, almost. Looks like we created a bridge there. Let's add a little more flux and clean that off. There we go. Alright, before we get too carried away with that, let's grab a fresh set of new capacitors. Oh boy. And it looks like we are on our last, well, not on our last set, I've got a few more, but it looks like I'll have to order more soon. Alright, a little more flux on those pads. You can never have too much of this stuff. I don't care what you say. We'll grab our first I'm going to put these into your view so you can see when I grab them. There we go. Get our hot air ready. We're going to try to put 2 of them on at the same time here. There we go. First 2 are on. Let's get some flux on for the other 2. And there we go. Those look nice and solid. Doesn't look like they're touching anything else around them. All right. Let's get those cameras switched back around, and hopefully this will be the last time we need to test this board before we can put the whole thing back together. And of course, since heat reduces our capacitor's ability to remove that unwanted DC, we'll want to make sure we give this plenty of time to cool down before we retest our DC offset results here. So we're just gonna wave this around for a sec, get that nice and cooled down, and then we'll test it again. Hey, what's up, Eddie? Welcome to the stream. How's it going, man? How long ago did you join? I just noticed your message. For all I know, you were here for the past like 10 minutes and you've already gone. Cause you normally split at around 4 o'clock my time for work or whatever. The audio is bad. You can't hear me? Uh-oh. Can anybody else on the stream hear me, or is this a personal problem? Let's see. Audio is fine for Ryan. Oh boy. Oh boy. Well, anyways, welcome to the stream, Ryan. Glad you could join us. Let's see if this is nice and cool. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Let's power this baby up. Where's my doobity-doo? I've got another cell phone that I use for checking this. Oh well, let me see here. I've got another cell phone that I use for checking this. Test. Oh well, let me see here. Let me go to my sound settings. I've got another cell phone that I use for checking this. Test. Oh well, let me see here. Let me go to my sound settings. Well, I'm gonna trust that. I'm gonna trust Ryan here. He says that our audio is good, so I'm gonna move forward for now. Oh well, let me see here. Let me go to my sound settings. Well, I'm gonna trust. Oh hey, welcome to the stream, Erickson. He says that our audio is good, so I'm gonna move forward for now. Oh well, let me see here. Let me go to my sound settings. Well, I'm gonna trust. Oh hey, welcome to the stream, Erickson. He says that our audio is good, so I'm gonna now I'm doubling forward for now. Yeah, I know why. Hold on. Sorry about that. So now I shouldn't be doubling. I had unmuted the stream audio on my streaming PC here, so that was probably starting to double back on you guys. I apologize for that. Awesome. Thank you for confirming, Ryan. Much appreciated. And thank you for the compliments, Erickson. I'm glad I can provide you guys with a little bit of entertainment here while you wait. Make sure we have no metal objects near this. We don't want them just rolling in there and causing catastrophe. Alright, so we've got our meter back. Let's just double check that it's got a good connection to our subwoofer here. Yes, indeed. Get some power. And boot this baby up, hopefully for the last, second to last time. We still gotta put it back together and make sure that it's all working after that too. But and yeah. And we've still got bass, of course. You know, it would suck if we did all that just to lose our bass, but we've got a very excellent result of 1 millivolt. So that is far better than the quickly fast approaching 50 millivolts that we saw. And on top of that, it doesn't seem to be increasing gradually either. So this, for all intents and purposes, appears to be all good to go. So we'll get this thrown back together. Audio is good for Eddie again. Good to hear. No pun intended. All right. And here is our shell. Our shelly shell that shells Shelly. You saw something on the other side of the capacitor. Was it changed? To what are you referring to now, good sir? So for this amplifier, we got the power diode replaced, got it powering on. We saw some DC offset symptoms, so we replaced the filtering caps as well. And she's all good to go now. But that's all we've replaced on here. There we go. Get in there. Yeah, I saw the pads that you showed me in that last email. I think they're interesting. It looks like they kind of. Let me show you the bottom of a HomePod shell here, so you see what I'm talking about. But all of the mid and high range sound comes out from directly like the bottom of the speaker here. So I'm curious how much that silicone base actually covers up, and if that's going to cover up any of this area here where the mid and high range sound actually comes out, because that actually all comes out from the bottom. So curious to see how that performs for you. I imagine it's probably fine. If I recall correctly, there were other Amazon reviews that didn't have any complaints about that, so. But the thought came across my mind when I saw how big it was and how much it presumably cups the bottom of the HomePod. Bro, I'm envious of that, how well that navy, that dark blue turned out for you. I'm gonna have to make one of those for myself, as well as the sandstone. I believe if they're saying the sound got better, because if that's giving the HomePod more full contact with the surface that it's sitting on, it's going to allow the HomePod to resonate with its surface and produce that and resonate that sound out better. So I believe that. You thought you could distract me, and then I would forget that ribbon cable connector on the amplifier. You are mistaken. Alright, time for our upper rings here. We are fast approaching the end of Brian's repair here. Assuming we didn't catastrophically fail anything else here, we should see some smooth sailing here forward. What I want, Eddie, is I want to buy every single color that RIT has for their synthetic Dymore line, and I just want one shelf of every single color side by side. That would look nice. And then I could have my gay HomePods. And no offense to anyone. I'm a bit of an egghead myself, so no offense. Please. Nothing wrong with your HomePod's orientation. Get our subwoofer put in there. You want to try a dirty color? What do you mean by that? You want like brown or something? I want, so dirty color, not sure. What I want to try, I want to figure out how to tie-dye a HomePod, make that look real nice without it looking like a cheap at-home tie-dye t-shirt kind of job there. I want to do it like the way Apple would do it if Apple ever released a tie-dye HomePod. Haven't quite figured out how they would do that yet. Alright, this woofer's not going back in. What's the dealio? There we go. Easy peasy. Let's go ahead and switch our camera angle up there. That does not want to sit down here. Why is that? Wow, that doesn't want to sit anywhere on that whole side there. Oh, I think I see it. I see the culprit. Let's see if that does the trick. There we go. Make sure we get that ribbon cable stuck back on there nice. We don't want that getting loose and rattling around. Yeah, any kind of smooth, non-porous, non-absorbent surface is going to sound better than a surface that's more porous or less dense, less able to reflect and resonate sound. Totally believe that. Yeah, you place the HomePod Mini on the right surface and you'll be blown away by how well it actually sounds. For the size and the price, I can't really complain about the HomePod Mini. I can't compare the Mini to the full-sized OG HomePod in terms of sound and performance, but standalone as it is, the Mini is in and of itself very impressive. I'm quite happy with its performance in settings and environments where I don't need a loud, full sound. It sounds loud and full enough on my desk, but I don't want to bother other people at my office whenever I'm in the office. So the one Mini on my desk at the office is perfect for like desk listening. I love it. And I wouldn't waste a full HomePod just to have it sit at my desk for the majority of the time I'm not actually there. But heck, I'll chuck a mini on my. I'll leave my mini back there, and you can get the minis used or not working in quote unquote for $20 to $40 on eBay. And majority of the time, these no power, non-working HomePod minis are actually just software bricks from people who haven't properly updated them. So I just plug them into I buy a HomePod mini for 20 to 40 bucks, plug it into my MacBook, restore it, and it's all working fine again. This is the only HomePod the mini. This is the only mini I've ever gotten that I haven't been able to fix just by plugging it into my Mac and restoring it. That's funny. I consistently hear people who talk about testing the sound on their HomePods. I consistently hear people saying that they're using the Mandalorian to test that. I think that's an interesting common denominator there. As strange as it may seem to my viewers here, I actually do not use any of my HomePods whatsoever for any sort of movie watching in my living room, or at all for that matter. The only time I use my HomePods, which to be fair is quite often, is just for playing music. If I'm watching something on my TV in the living room with my Apple TV, if it's not music, if it's anything else, I'm just using my living room home theater setup, which is a Yamaha. It's some Yamaha Avantage. It's a nice receiver. It sounds great, and I've got floor standing speakers in the whole 9 yards, 7.1 surround sound or 7.2 actually surround sound setup, and I'm quite happy with my home theater setup without any HomePods involved. But when it comes to music and, if I'm listening to music, chances are I'm not usually sitting in the same spot. I'm usually moving around the house. So I will, that's when I break out the HomePods and bump some beats on them. Well, if you, Mr. Eddie, it sounds like you've got the mini set up as the default sound output for your Apple TV. Why don't you just change it to your full-sized HomePods to be the default audio output? Well, okay, I think I know what you're saying. Like, the problem is you can't select multiple speakers as the default audio output. So, whether you want, you want like all of them, right? I'm assuming you want both the minis and the OGs to be the default output, and that's not something you can do yet. So, I see. Rumor has it, iOS 16.1 and AudioOS 16.1 for the HomePods is supposed to bring better support for multiple HomePods in the same home. So maybe, just maybe, we might see some fancy new features in regards to home theater capability with HomePods and interactions from Apple TV. Fingers crossed. Yeah, 16.0 already dropped about a week ago. I've got all of my HomePods updated without a problem. It took a full day, but I hit update, I waited a day, and I came back to check on them, and they were all updated. So, but 16.0 dropped about a week ago. 16.1 is already out in beta, and Apple's notes say that they made improvements to homes with quote mini HomePods or something like that. So I'm quite excited as someone who's got 30 of these freaking things floating around the house, and having to buy a second access point to manage all of the Wi-Fi traffic effectively across all of them. On a normal day where I've streamed music for a while, I easily see 2 to 6 terabytes of data throughput through my Wi-Fi access points within 24 hours. And that's not 24 hours of full use. That's 24 hours. That's just a normal day where I'm playing, probably I'm airplaying to them for 2 to 4 hours, maybe 6. I do also have Atmos and lossless enabled, so that's going to have a lot to do with it. But still, that's some insane throughput. Like, almost certainly that's not pure internet data usage. That's just the communication between each HomePod, because I think one HomePod or a few HomePods grab the data from the internet and then they share it with each other. I could be wrong there. But peace out, Eddie. Thanks for dropping by. Be well. Don't die your HomePod before me. Okay, you got it, man. All right, I'll dye yours first, but I'm the one who's gonna get to take pictures of it and share it and brag about it online before you. So, see it, man. Oh, right. Hot, 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 hot. Ouchie, ouchie, ouchie. Hot, 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 hot. Hot, 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 hot. Ooh. I might have given that a little too much heat there. Well, I mean, not too much, but too much for my personal comfort. Make sure that's on there nice and neat. And then, since I've got you folks here, you see that little stain right there? Right there, that little bitty stain? Right there. It looks like we've got a few spots around here, actually. Let's grab a Q-tip with some rubbing alcohol and see if we can't clean that up real fast. And if we can, then we'll go ahead and hit the rest of those spots before we send it back to them. Whoa, Brian. That's a name I haven't seen in a while. How you doing, man? And welcome to the stream. Grab one more here. I'm doing great, man. You know, I've got running water here. That's all I could really ask for. Had to live without running water the past week and a half, but they came by and gave us a temporary fix, and we've been living large ever since. And look at that. It's gone. You tell me, point to me on where it's at. You can't. Looks like we got another one over here we can touch up. But we'll go ahead and clean the rest of this up before we send it back to them here. What's more important is if we've actually gotten it fixed and properly put back together. So we'll plug that in and give it a test here. Drum roll, please. Booyah, we got power. Alright, let's check and make sure that we've got sound, you know, no severe popping, and that our volume buttons are lining up nice and even.
I'm having trouble connecting to the internet.
Alright, yeah. Alright. And yeah. This bad boy's ready to rock. So, set that to the side. We'll be sure to give it a nice little detailing here. Looks like there's a few spots on the side here too. So those are easy enough for us to go ahead and clean up while we've got it. So we're going to do that for them before we send it back. Anyways, let's move on to a slightly more interesting repair today from Ericsson, and they've got a case of the death farts. So let's crack that open and take a look at what's going on here. Get rid of that power cable, we don't need it. Just smacked myself in the face with it. Ouchie. Okay. So we're expecting this one to power on. But based on the description that Ericsson gave us here, when we power this on and we wake it up for the first time, I'm expecting to hear a pretty healthy pop. And if we let it run for a few minutes, I'm sure we'd hear death farts. But we're not going to let it run for that long, just so we don't, break more than what's already broken here. But let's go ahead and get it powered on. And yes, sirree, it's powering on. Stay hydrated. That's some good water. Alright, so it's booted up. Let's listen carefully for that pop.
I'm having trouble connecting.
Yeah, that's a pretty nasty pop. And then when we unplug it from power, we're gonna hear another pop. Yeah. That's a pretty nasty case there. So we are going to take this bad boy apart, same as always, And then let's get it put back together on the bench here so we can see exactly how much DC offset we're talking about here. And here we go. Alright, got that off without a problem. Oh man. There we go. And looks like we've got a fighter. You will not win. There we go. So the thing to keep in mind with the popping, right, is the popping alone, just by itself, isn't a good enough indicator that you've got problems. A totally functional and completely within spec all across the board OG HomePod at the end of the day can still pop on you. That's fine. The problem arises when your popping starts to get really loud, like what we just observed with this one, where you can really hear it in the subwoofer. And then it's also accompanied by other issues like your death farts. That's a sign that things are getting out of control. But the popping alone, and in all likeliness, you're probably, even after replacing everything in your HomePod, you'll probably still end up having a very quiet popping as it goes in and out of standby and turns the amp on or off. But like I said, what matters is not whether it pops or not, but how it pops and if it's got any other problems with it. So I've got, like I said, out of the 30 that I've got, probably 15 of them make popping sounds as they go in and out of standby. And I haven't had all of those for years, but I will say the ones that I have had for more than a year or so, they pop and they work fine. I've taken some of them apart that pop just to double check and make sure, and sure enough, there's no obvious problems. So I've already gone ahead and replaced every single part that you could possibly replace on the amplifier of a HomePod, and it still pops. So that's why I've come to the conclusion that a quiet, and I've got the same info on my website under the common issue section for the popping. But if all you've got is a very quiet popping and no other issues, it's probably fine. But and the other problem is you know how loud a given sound is can be extremely subjective. So what's quiet to somebody else may be loud to someone, and what's loud to someone may be quiet to someone else. So for me to just go out and say, yeah, if your popping is quiet, then you're fine. If it's loud, you're in for trouble. It's a little more complicated than that. But it's the best rule of thumb that I can give for people to determine whether or not they want to spend the money and send it in to get it fixed. Ooh, do we got a fighter? Are you gonna put up a fight? No, you're not. You're gonna give up just like that, aren't you? Yeah, that's what I thought. And just like that, got that off. Oh, and one other thing, when you go online and you read other folks saying that they've got popping and then it dies shortly after, I'm sure that they've got popping that's probably as severe as what we've got here. And I would be pretty doubtful that anybody has had very quiet, subtle popping and then it fails shortly after. Instances where people say they heard popping before it stopped working, that's most likely the kind of severity of popping that we just heard here on Ericsson's before we took it apart. And speaking of popping and blowing up, let's just peek at the condition of the woofer here. Voice coil looks good. Speaker feels nice and smooth. And it smells nice and fresh. So for all intents and purposes, the subwoofer speaker looks to still be in good working order. That's always good to see. Okay. Before we do any repairs, like I said, let's get this powered on, exposed on the bench here so we can see exactly how much DC offset this poor little amplifier is spitting out onto our poor little subwoofer, causing our death farts and all sorts of issues. Alright folks, take your guesses. How much DC offset will we see here? Will it be 50 millivolts? Will it be 500 millivolts? Will it be 1.5 volts? Full volts. Not this millivolts. Not these weenie volts. But full volts. All the DC. What do we got? Oh, we're past 200 millivolts. Let's jump up to the 2 volt DC scale. Oh, 500 millivolts. Wow. And that is fast approaching 600 here already. Wow. That's pretty gnarly. And then I bet you if we take this subwoofer connector and we play with that, you hear that popping? You can even see the woofer moving here. See that? No bueno. We don't want that. And just in the time we've been sitting here dicking around, we're almost at 800. Whoa, whoa. Whoa. There we go. We're already at 900 millivolts. Alright, we're gonna disconnect that before we cause too much problems here. And let's get that corrected. After our repairs, we don't want to see more than 50 millivolts. And we were fast approaching 900 to 1000 millivolts, which is aka 1 full volt. And that is far past the point of desirable. Okay. Okay. Give me a good angle. Yeah. We're gonna go ahead and replace these 4 capacitors right here, these big brown boys. See if we can't improve that DC offset situation. Oh boy. Ugh. Old caps be gone. Let's Let's get some fresh solder on those pads, some fresh low temp solder, so we don't have to torture the new capacitors to get them on there. I understand none of this, but it all sounds bad. Oh, that's good. Alright, we've got some fresh low temp solder on there. Let's get... Hello. Let's get nice and close again. Put some fresh new bad boys on there if I can find the center of the camera here. There we go. Oh boy, I'm feeling the frickin' fatigue. Get some fresh flux on there. Excuse me. Let's begin. We're going to add a little more flux and just flow those one more time. Better safe than sorry. Wonderful. Okay. Give that a chance to really cool down. We're going to flip this board around and we are going to replace our power diode on here, not because it has anything to do with our death parts issue, our DC offset issue here, but just because this part fails so often that we're going to go ahead and just get that replaced for them while we're in here. We don't want to fix them up for one thing and then a few months down the road end up with a totally different and totally preventable problem. At least from our understanding, these diodes here just go kaputs all on their own. So we'll get a brand new one on here so they won't have to worry about no power issues for a long time coming. And there we go. We'll stick that into the used pile. I am keeping separate the diodes that are still working and the ones that have fried between all of my repairs. Not sure what I'm going to do with them all, but we will come up with uses for them eventually. If anything, to maybe get a better understanding of exactly why these tend to fail so often. And we're going to grab a fresh, brand new one. Alright, let's give that a second to cool down. I'm going to actually take a quick break. Give me 30 seconds to like a minute or so. Grab some water, take a bathroom break, do whatever you need, and we'll be right back in just a minute. We're going to give this board a second to cool down here as well. Alright, nerds. Still feels a little warm, so we'll shake it off real fast. And then we'll give this board hopefully one last test here on the bench before we can throw this back together. Alright, that should be sufficient. Yeah. So, Erickson, interesting that you bring that up. I have recently just figured out a fair pricing option for people who want to have their HomePods dyed a custom color. So, unfortunately, I don't have any spare meshes sitting around to swap someone from white to black or black to white, for example. However, if you have a white HomePod and you want to send it in for repairs and you want to also have me color it a custom color, I will do that for 20 bucks on top of the normal repair charge. If you're sending your HomePod in and all you want is for me to color it a custom color, then that's going to be $40 by itself. But if you're sending it in for repairs and you want me to color it at the same time, I can do that for 20 bucks on top of the normal repair rate. And all things considered, the coloring them, I love doing it. Don't get me wrong. But it does take, coloring the mesh, it actually takes a lot longer than doing a repair on average. So, that considered, I think it's a heck of a deal. Also considering the dye is like upwards of $7 to $10 a bottle, you would have a hard time basically finding something like that for less, unless you want to take it apart and do it yourself. And I've got steps for that if you want to do it yourself. I encourage people to do their own stuff, of course. That's how I got started, doing my own thing. And yeah, honestly, I would really like in the future to offer like just a straight up black to white or white to black swap. That'd be really awesome. But unfortunately, I just don't see Apple ever giving us availability to parts for these. So the only way that I'd be able to do that is if I started buying a bunch of good condition HomePods for parts. And typically ones that are being sold for parts have been abused and beaten up and neglected, so they're not in great condition to swap with others. It sucks. But that's the world that we live in here with Apple. And at the very least, we've got various dyes that we can color them if we want to. Alright, so it's booted back up. Let's check it for our offset, and we're going to jump that back down to the 200 millivolt scale. And we can see here on our meter that we've got a very, very clean result of about 1 to 2 millivolts. So that is a very massive improvement over the fast approaching 900 millivolts to 1 volt DC that we were seeing. And I'm just making sure that the base still works. Yes, yes, yes. So our death farts appear to be all fixed up on here. Of course, pending factory resetting this and doing some extended music playback on it to make sure. We've corrected all of the symptoms. And so there should be no more death farts for this HomePod. So, like I said, let's get this put back together. Make sure that we've got it put back together correctly and it powers on, gives us nice sound, no severe popping. And then after the stream, and this is what I do for most people's HomePods, I don't go through the process of factory resetting them and repairing them with my phone for most people's. Usually pulling up Siri and making Siri complain and checking the volume buttons is a good enough test for any sort of issues with how the HomePod is sealed or put back together. But for ones that people complain about death farts and bass issues, those are the ones that I tend to go through the process of factory resetting, setting up with my phone, and playing some music back on them for about an hour or so to make sure that there's no more issues. And blah, 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 blah. Most people don't care. They just want to bump some beats, man. I feel ya. Oh yeah, somebody sent me an email a few days ago asking if I fix iPods still. They were asking if I still fix iPods. And I thought that was a strange question because that implied that I've fixed iPods previously, at least on the channel here. And I've never done that. I've fixed plenty of iPods for myself, but never mentioned or actually fixed any iPods on the channel here, so that was already kind of odd to me as they were asking if I still fix iPods. And I was like, yeah, I still do work on them here and there. Let me know what models you have and what your problems are so I can see if that's something I can fix for you or not. And their reply was, okay. Like, did you just want to know? Or were you actually trying to get something fixed, my guy? Because, like, I asked you a question. I need to know what your problem is in order to tell you if I can fix it or not, my guy. I ain't no ESP. I'm no mind reader. Some of the emails that I get, man. Whew. Makes me wonder if, I don't know what it makes me wonder, actually. Because I've definitely sent some questionable emails in the past, severely lacking in information and usefulness. So I'm sure everybody's got those days. But at the same time, like, you asked me if I can fix HomePod or iPods, and I'm like, what you got? And you're just like, okay. Thanks. Thanks for letting me know. I mean, at least they followed up, I guess, in their own way. I'm half expecting a box of iPods to show up one day with no notes or anything. Just, please fix. And if you're watching, if you're the one who sent that email, if you're watching, let me know what it is that you got, man. I'm more than happy to fix anything I think I can fix that you can throw at me. I'm happy to try. And I don't charge anything just to try. I only charge if we actually get things fixed up. Ah, drats. I've been leaving you guys in the dark. Can't see what I'm doing. Time for the final piece here. And then we can give it one final test. At least on the stream here. We'll go ahead and, like I said earlier, we'll do some extended testing after the stream just to make sure. But based on our experience here, I've got no reason to believe that we will have any sort of death fart issues on this HomePod ever again. At least for a very, very long time. We're talking years. Hot, 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 hot. All right. What do we got? What do we got? Drum roll, please. Baba Booey. All right.
I'm having
And
trouble connecting to the internet.
that sounds good.
I'm having trouble.
And the volume buttons are lined up nice and evenly. All right, Erickson. Pending, like I said a few times now, an extended test offline here. This one appears to be all ready to go. So let's put that back into its box. And let's break out our fourth and final HomePod here from Alan. Erickson, it's my pleasure. Always a pleasure to bring stuff like this back to life. It's all worth it to save these things from going into the frickin' landfill, making you go to Apple and spending retail on another one. All that good jazz in a bag of chips. It's all worth it in the end to me. All right. Alan, good sir. Your HomePod here, if I recall correctly, had no power. So let's get that plugged in and double check its symptoms, and then we'll crack it on open. And sure enough, no signs of life. We've got about 6 spots being drawn at the wall, so probably the same no power repair as the first 2 that we just did. Let's get this cracked open. Dum. Oh, a wild Allen appeared in the chat. I'm sure you've been here for a while, but welcome to the stream. Glad you could join us. Let's switch up that camera angle there. Get you that sweet, sweet side angle. Ah, beautiful. Easy peasy. Your friend Adam is watching too. He was a big skeptic. Oh boy, am I about to wreck his skepticism. I mean, heck, Adam, Mr. Allen's friend, sir. If you've got any skepticism whatsoever, you are more than welcome to point it out, verbalize, ask your questions, or heck, you can even drop on by and I'll do a repair right in front of you, and we can talk about as much as you want here. But we've done at least 100 of these HomePods for just the no power issue alone by now. I think we've pretty much come across anything that you could possibly come across at this point. Pretty much all of them have the same issue, which is that diode on the amplifier that shorts out. On rare occasion, you've instead got a short on the logic board. And even less often, you've got a blown power supply fuse. But as I explained at the beginning of our live stream today, you can pretty much take an educated guess as to which of those 3 failure modes your no power issue is actually coming from based on the power draw at the wall. So if you're seeing anywhere from 3 to 10 watts being pulled at the wall, that's most likely a shorted component preventing your HomePod from powering on. If you're seeing about 1 to 2 watts being pulled at the wall, that's more likely to be a short coming from your logic board and not the diode on the amplifier. And then if you see no power being drawn at the wall, that's most likely a blown fuse in your power supply. And those are short of the extreme cases where someone threw their HomePod across the room in a concrete onto a concrete floor, or other catastrophic physical damage. That's pretty much always been the case for these HomePods here with no power. And I mean, let's see, technical reasons aside for skepticism, I totally understand where people are coming from if they're talking about, like, you're talking to this random stranger on the internet, and just because they've got, probably 100 or so live streams fixing these at one point, that could all be fake. And I could just be running some elaborate scam to steal people's money in HomePods. That's not impossible, but that would be really difficult to pull off. I try to try to maintain a good reputation, and so far we've got a perfect record with everyone happy so far. That was more his skepticism. I 100% understand that. That's why I try to make my presence as big and known and open and across various social media platforms as possible. I think that usually helps people feel the most comfortable is when they see that somebody doesn't just have the one media outlet, like social media presence and like a website per se. I'm on Reddit, I'm on YouTube, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Discord, I've got a Trustpilot, and my website, and all of those things link together. They all link together. So if I were to try to screw somebody over, they've got multiple avenues to call me out in public on this. But that's honestly, I'm a little worried about that too. I'm a little personally worried about somebody trying to take advantage of me here. But I think I've put together a pretty decent system here to prevent any sort of abuse, at least to me. And then I try to make my presence online as public and known as possible so that people feel comfortable and they kind of know who they're sending it into. Oh wow, that came up real easy. Let's see here. Nope, not quite. Let's work that up a little more. And booyah. Let's get some of that extra adhesive taken off here so it doesn't mess us up when we put this back together. There we go. Time for that woofer. And hey, if people have their doubts, I want to hear it. I want to know what your concerns are. Because I want people to feel safe and happy and confident in who they're sending their shit into for repair. And hey, I mean, Louis Rossman's leaving his repair business and moving on to bigger things. So there's a little room opening up in the YouTube repair space, eh? Maybe I'll swoop in and take over. Make myself really known. Alright, woofer all checks out. It passes the push test, the look test, and the smell test. Smells great. It smells like a good working woofer. You can trust a man that smells his speakers. Or woman.
Can I go down here?
Yeah.
Would it be too loud?
No.
Just close the doors.
Okay. My fucking wife was creeping on me. It scared the shit out of me for a second. She's coloring her hair right now. Wanted to make sure that she could run the blow dryer without popping a fuse. Our house's wiring is absolutely abysmal. We've still got a Zinsco breaker panel, fuse panel, and wiring throughout the house and circuit breakers. So if you know, you know. Zinsco's trouble. And there is pretty much every single outlet in this house is on a 15 amp breaker, and pretty much one half of the house shares one breaker and the other half of the house shares another breaker, and you put any real load on any of that and you're popping breakers. 15 amps is really not a whole lot when you're talking about splitting that up to across half a house. Probably not so much for your average person who doesn't have dozens of computers online at any given moment. Other high power, high amp draw appliances and such. I'm sure most people don't have a server rack in their laundry room like I do. But still, 15 amp breaker per each half of the house, that's ridiculous. And this is, I think, like a 1,300 square foot house. There's 3 or 4 bedrooms, a living room, a kitchen, a sort of common-ish area. So, not sure what they were thinking when they were wiring this place. Even for your normal Joe. Oh man, speaking of sketchy scammers, right? I was just watching a recent Pleasant Green video on YouTube. I don't know if any of you guys watch Pleasant Green's YouTube channel, but if you're into scam baiting and scammers at all, you should totally go check his channel out. But I was watching one of his recent videos, and one of the scammers was like, I can take Cash App, Zelle, or PayPal. And I shuddered for a second because I was like, that's pretty much exactly what I tell everybody when they when I tell them, that, like, hey, we got your HomePod fixed up, here's how you can pay. It sounds textbook scammer when I email people like how they can pay me after the repairs are done. But it is what it is. Frickin' spammers and scammers. You know who I haven't seen around in a while? Those YouTube chat bots in my live stream chat. I used to get all sorts of OnlyFans spam bots and like OnlyFans knockoff spam bots. But I guess I got too boring for them to continue with me. Oh, before we replace that, let's just go ahead and sanity check here for posterity. Let's get our multimeter turned on. Let's grab those probes. We're going to switch this to continuity test mode. Make sure our meter's actually working here. There we go. Double check that diode. Yep, that diode is certainly shorted out. Alan asked, what colors can we dye the HomePod? Let me put this in the chat so that way, in case anybody's like using a translator, I can dye white HomePods, any color available from Ritz Dye More for Synthetics line. So far, I've only tried red and blue from that line of RIT dye products. So I've only got photos of how the red and blue turn out. I've got a HomePod from Eddie coming in, I think this Friday, that he wants to have dyed a sandstone color. It's gonna look like this really beautiful, pretty much like, imagine if Apple made a gold colored or like a sand colored HomePod. That's exactly how it's gonna end up looking. And I I'm pretty excited to see how that turns out. Oh, hi Rodrigo, welcome to the stream. Thanks for joining us. You sent yours on your way out today. Oh, nice! Nice. Let's get our new diode prepped before we just drop that on there. That would be a hell of a scam, though. Like, getting people to send me their broken HomePods, and then I just fix them, and then get them to pay for their repairs, and I keep the HomePod and, like, the repair fee, and just totally scam them. That would be a hell of a scam. I would make out like a bandit for, for the duration that it would last until, obviously people caught on and started complaining online, and the next thing you know, you look up how to contact me for repairs, and you're coming across all these posts complaining about me scamming people. So I do often think about it, about my how I'm perceived by internet strangers. At least a little. Alright, so fresh spankin' diode on here. We've done nothing else to this board yet, but we're going to let this cool down for a second, and then we're going to power it on, see if it actually powers on, see if our repair worked. And then, same as always, for all of our no power repairs, we're going to double check and see if it's got any of that DC offset. And like I've said a bunch before, the DC offset issue and the no power issue, those are the two most common problems, but they're totally independent of each other. You could have death farts and popping and never experience the no power issue, and vice versa. You could experience death farts, you could experience no power issues and you won't have any death farts whatsoever. But that said, there are also plenty of cases where you end up catching both of those problems on your HomePod. So that's why we go through here and do a thorough test of everything, just to be sure that we aren't fixing one problem and completely ignoring another, sending you back a HomePod that ends up not working a month or two later. So this is almost certainly going to power back on. The real question is, was this the only problem, or do it got a little DC as well? A little DC is okay as a snack. Alright, we've got a good connection to the woofer there. The reason why you see me tapping the woofer after I connect it to my multimeter here is by me moving the woofer here, that's going to inherently generate a little bit of DC voltage, and if I see my meter registering that DC voltage as I mess with the woofer here, I know I've got a good connection to it, or at least a decent enough connection to see if we have any DC offset being generated by the amplifier here. So if you were curious, why I do that, now you know. And this isn't going to do any harm to it. So we've put that subwoofer through far more than what a little finger with a couple of pokes can do. And I'm shocked that it still works. But here we are. And drum roll, please. Nice. We're booting up. That was the goal with the live stream repairs. Rodrigo was saying, I heard about people being skeptical about the way you're doing business. The way I see it is there's really not much other way to do it, right? Like, aside from putting up a website, you know, and like trying to put your name out there and buy like advertising or whatever, what's distinguishing any other normal legitimate online business that you find online from me, for example? So the way I see it, if I'm live streaming every single repair that people send in, you really can't have more accountability than that. And it also serves as a really good historical record for me and for the person sending the HomePod in. So if they were ever curious about how their specific HomePod was handled, they can go back to the video on demand and rewatch that repair being done. Also, it serves as good record for me in case somebody's gotten their HomePod fixed and then they hit me up after they get it back and they're like, hey, I still have this problem, or you fixed this, but now I've got this problem. I can go back and rewatch the live stream repair that I did for them and check all of my work, check the physical condition of anything that I may have missed. And actually, that's how I figured out, I can't remember their name, but they shipped their HomePod from New York, and it had no bass. So they sent it in, we replaced their subwoofer speaker, and then we tested it on stream, and it performed perfectly. So, and in a rare stroke of luck, I actually even factory reset it and played music through it on stream to prove that the bass was working in a good working order again. I shipped it back to them, and after they got it, as soon as they got it, they told me that the bass sounded dirty. So I went ahead and I bought a shipping label for them and had them send it back. And when I took it apart again, I found that the subwoofer speaker had gotten bent. And I was curious. I was like, did I really put a bent, fucked up subwoofer speaker in this guy's HomePod, not test it, and then send it back to him? And that wasn't the case. I went and rewatched my live repair, and you could easily see the original, or the subwoofer that I put into their HomePod was not bent, and it was in perfect condition. And then when I got their HomePod back to check on it again, the subwoofer was absolutely bent. I think I still have it on my shelf here. Yeah, here it is. So there's this like pretty gnarly bend in the woofer basket here, and that was causing the subwoofer to not sit flush with the gasket and allowing it to leak air, which resulted in a really dirty sounding bass. So without me having done the repair live on YouTube, I wouldn't have had that video to go back and watch and verify that I put good parts back into their speaker and that it wasn't in fact my fault, but it was actually damaged in shipping on the way back to them. So I ended up not filing an insurance claim. I just totally ate all the costs, including shipping back and forth and the replacement speaker again for them. But it really helped. It proved that it was a really effective way of keeping track of these repairs and going back and being able to see exactly what was done and potentially what other problems may have stuck around. Okay, so we've blabbed enough about this. We haven't checked this for DC offset yet, so let's wake up the amplifier and double check that. And shit, yeah. So we've only got 2-ish millivolts of DC offset here. That is a completely tolerable result. Like I've said a bunch before, we really only care about two things here. We don't want to see this number increasing at a fast rate, and we don't want to see this above 50 millivolts. And both of those are true here. So this pod is all good to go. Obviously we gotta put it back together, but this one seems to be all nice and ready. So we'll get these parts off and throw it back together. And I think this is my last one, yeah. Awesome. When I was a kid, one thing that I absolutely enjoyed was going to the mechanic and being able to see the mechanic like work on your car. I mean, you obviously had the option of getting a ride or walking to a nearby store and dicking around while they work on your car, but what I really thought was awesome and like super cool was like most mechanics and even like tire shops, the lobby has just a clear glass like wall separating you from the mechanics actually working on your car. So if you wanted, you could just sit there and watch them work on your car. And granted, if you don't know much about cars, then you're not going to know much about whether they're doing the right thing or not. And the same would be said here. If you don't know much about electronics, then you don't really know if what I'm doing here is the right thing or not. But that said, if somebody wants to come in here and tell me that I'm doing something wrong or that I should be doing something some other way, or that's not the right way to fix this, you should actually be replacing this instead, I am all ears for that kind of thing. Because as of right now, there really aren't that many people taking the deep dive and spending the time and honestly sacrificing HomePods for parts and breaking them in some cases in order to figure out these repairs. And that's where I saw the opportunity among many other things. Like, I saw that nobody else was really doing this sort of work in this space, and I was like, huh, maybe this is where I could really like make a name for myself, save a few electronics, and like, I don't know, it seemed like the perfect opportunity for me, and I took it. And I don't know what the long-term plan is here yet. But for now, we're just out here fixing as many HomePods as we as people send in. Maybe one day I'll grow more and I'll expand and gain a reputation to fix more than just HomePods, and I'll be able to like start a full-fledged business and fully rely on this sort of work. That's the real dream. But I am also totally content for now doing this in my free time. And yeah. Yeah, that's unfortunate, Alan. That like so many of these, well, pretty much that's going to be the same answer you get anywhere, any Apple store in the world. They're going to tell you, lol, here's how much it is to replace it. If it's out of warranty, you're paying to replace it. There are some special cases where people get a really nice representative that happens to have the power to override and give you a free HomePod out of warranty replacement. But no Apple store in the world is going to offer repairs. The only thing they can do is just outright replace it. And if you're out of warranty, boy, you're going to pay for it. And it kind of makes sense. It makes a like teeny tiny bit of sense. Somebody else made a good point that Apple does not like Frankenstein devices, and because you go and you fix one problem, and now you've basically guaranteed, at least in the customer's mind, you've guaranteed that that product is in perfect working order for many more years, when in reality they've only replaced the one faulty component. They didn't replace anything else that may potentially fail shortly thereafter. And then you've got what's called a Frankenstein device, where it's like put together with parts from different products. And let's see, where am I going with this? Where was I going with this? Well, anyways, it's about being able to support the products that you want to support without the issues that come along with slapping a bunch of used parts together and calling it good. Yeah, there is no authorized repair for HomePods. What happens to a HomePod when you send it into Apple and you buy a warranty, like out of warranty replacement from them, is, and I recently learned about this myself, but they do nothing as far as attempting any sort of repairs whatsoever with any HomePods that you send in when you buy a warranty replacement. All they do with the HomePods, broken, working, or otherwise, is they tear them down and they recycle them for the raw materials. They send it to this machine called Daisy, and Daisy does her job tearing them apart, and that's the last you see of the HomePod. It gets broken down into raw materials and reused for other stuff. And like, I understand the image, the perception, the reputation that Apple wants to maintain for themselves, like top shelf, top quality products or whatever. But would it really hurt for you to like have like a parts shop where like we could go and buy like used or hell, even broken parts, like just straight up, like, this is broken, this is the price, there's no warranty, by buying this you agree to understand that this is broken and it's not going to work, and you should not expect any sort of, and it's the same thing with like, why doesn't Apple just let us have a jailbreak toggle in our phone settings? They really want to keep every aspect of their products and user experience under their control. HomePods were born too soon to have Apple authorized repair options and parts, like through the self-service repair program. They were born too early for that. And they were born too late for the manufacturer to give you frickin' schematics on the whole thing and how it's put together. If y'all remember that, like, back in the day, when frickin' manufacturers would not only give you and sell you directly, like replacement parts for your stuff, but they'd even include a freaking schematic for how the whole thing is built and put together in the box with your product. It's a shame, because now companies are arguing that, like, oh, if we give out the schematics, then people are going to steal our products. And it's like, if somebody wanted to steal your product, they could just buy it, take it apart, and then reverse engineer it. If some 20-something-year-old that has no experience in this field can take it apart and reverse engineer it, then a lot of other people can too. I don't see that as a legitimate reason not to allow for self-repair and share schematics. But I'm just being an old man yelling at sky. We have to put our faith into Apple that they will create the tech utopia that we all dream of. A one-size-fits-all solution. And when it no longer fits you, you buy another one. You don't take that shit to the tailor to get resized for you. You throw it away and you buy a new one. What are you, mad? Alright, we are nearing the end of this repair here. HomePod is starting to retake its original form. Get in there. These guys are playing games. I ain't trying to play games. I'm trying to finish so I can go eat. Bollocks. Come here. You big stinky turd. sure that's nice and in there. No, no. The last melon. And the snoot drooped. All right, let's find out if we got this one all fixed up or if this is just an elaborate scam. And drum roll, please. Baba booey! We're gonna get nice up and close with that little icon there, the little indicator. Yeah. And
I'm having trouble connecting to the internet. For more
yeah.
info, I'm having
Yeah. That's a fixed HomePod if you ask me. Alright everyone. We got all 4 HomePods sent in today fixed up without a problem. No surprises. Pretty standard set of repairs here. We've pretty much just got shorted diodes across the board and a couple of ones that needed some new filtering capacitors. And aside from that, pretty easy set of repairs for ourselves today. So if your HomePod was fixed up during this stream, give me a few hours after I kill it here to factory reset and make sure that your HomePod is all sound tested and sealed nice and properly and good to go. And then I'll shoot you an update email with the total repair cost, how you can pay, confirming your return shipping address, etc., etc. And then we'll get it dropped off at the post office and on its way back to you tomorrow. So, in any case, I hope you all enjoyed this live stream repair. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them down in the comments. I've also got my website, nixfix.com. Go ahead and check that out if you want to learn more about fixing your own HomePod, or perhaps want to email me in order to have your HomePod sent in for repair and featured here on the channel. I live stream every single HomePod that comes in for repair. So you don't have to worry about asking for it or whatever. Before I start the stream, I email you with a link to watch the repairs get done. So any questions, feel free to shoot them to me, leave them in the comments, email me, check out my website, and I hope you all have a good rest of your Monday. Goodbye!